One of my favourite things in Starcitizen is watching fleet tour videos. I love seeing what ships everybody's picked and why they picked them, and it's really interesting to see how differently everybody approaches the game. So today I thought I'd do my own fleet tour and show my entire Starcitizen fleet, from the smallest starter ships to the heavy hitters, and I'm going to take you through each and every ship that I own, showing what makes them unique and why they have a place in my collection. Stick around to the end because I'll be saving the best ships for last, whether you're a new player looking for ideas for your next ship or a veteran with your own fleet. I think you'll enjoy this deep dive into the ships that keep me flying through the verse. Let's get started. Now I figured we'd start the video talking about combat ships. Now I do very little actual PvP combat, so most of my combat is PvE, so that will kind of be what this is kind of biased towards. I'm also not the best pilot in the world, so those really fast kind of light fighters that you see that people use, not really my favorite. I do prefer like a heavier fighter that's got a bit more staying power because I'm not avoiding getting shot very well. But let's start up with the RSI Scorpius Antares. This was actually the first combat ship I ever bought in Starcitizen, and I picked it up for one simple reason. It looks like an X-Wing, and honestly, that's just cool to me. But beyond the looks, the Antares is a little bit of a powerhouse. It has reasonable firepower, decent shields, and that iconic folding wing design is just so cool. This ship is built for combat, but it's versatile and packs a decent amount of firepower for dogfights, while still handling reasonably well in the variety of battle scenarios. My only issue with it is it just doesn't lack that oomph that I'd like from a fighter. It doesn't feel like you're firing big weapons, and it doesn't really feel like you're damaging things too much. It's very much more like a slowly chipping away with constant little light blasters kind of ship. Now, that lack of oomph that I felt in the Antares is what led me on to my next purchase, the Crusader Ares Starfighter Inferno. Now, I only purchased this one over the alternate form purely because it was black rather than white, and I thought that looked cooler. My little peanut brain didn't even notice that they've got totally different weapons, so that's why I've ended up with this one. Now, this ship is built for pure aggression, as you can tell from that giant weapon on the side of what is honestly a relatively small ship. I loved the aesthetic of it. I kind of like the asymmetrical design of it as well. And yeah, I went for this purely because I just wanted a heavier gun that would shred through targets really quickly. The only problem I did find with this ship though is I haven't really enjoyed having the weapon not on a gimbal. Quite frankly, I'm just not really a good enough pilot to make the most out of this ship. Although it is really fun, and I've had some funny moments with it for sure. Now, the next ship I'd like to show is the Esperia Talon. I bought this ship purely because I wanted an alien ship in my fleet. I think they look cool. I think it's got a really striking design, and it's probably one of the most unique looking ships that I own. However, if I'm honest, I don't think I've ever actually really used it other than just when I bought it and I went out and flew it around a little bit and shot a few things, and then I think it's just been sat in my hangar ever since. Bit of a waste, but very cool looking ship and probably far better than what I am aware of. Now, the next ship I want to cover when I'm looking at my combat ships is the Aegis Eclipse. This is a stealthy bomber that has a really cool aesthetic and some real big bombs. I only actually bought this ship because I was flying around and instantly blew up one day, and I didn't realise it was because I was watching Netflix on my other screen, not paying attention, and another player had locked a missile onto me and just blew me up in one hit. I was a bit annoyed at the time, but looking back on it, it's quite funny, and I bought this ship purely so I'd be able to do that to other people, so I can't really complain, can I? Now, this ship has an awesome aesthetic. It's got relatively decent stealth capabilities as well, making it quite hard to detect, but the thing that's best about this ship is that heavy payload. It's got such huge torpedoes on it, or missiles, or whatever the hell you call them in this game. It does only carry a few, but I've had some really funny experiences just smashing somebody with those and watching them just get blown up straight away. Great ship, I love it. I just wish I had better guns for actually dogfighting. Now, finally on my combat ships, let's talk about the Aegis Vanguard Sentinel. This is the ship that made me stop looking at other combat ships to purchase. I'm very happy with this ship. It does everything that I need. I just love being able to go in there. You've got a lot of firepower as the pilot that you use to take down their shields whilst charging up your EMP. And you fire that EMP and just watch them fall to the ground. Honestly, I find it so much more satisfying watching a ship fall out the sky and crash into the ground and blow up, more so than actually blowing it up with my own weapons myself. It's just really funny to imagine them just helplessly there in the cockpit, just like watching the ground get so much closer minute by minute. I actually really love the aesthetic of this ship as well. Another thing I love about it is something I value in ships is having that rear opening kind of drop down to there. I love how there's also a little bit of space to store a few things in the back if you find something valuable on a ship you've made crash. And I like how it's also got multi-crew capacity on it as well. It maybe doesn't have quite as much firepower as the other Wardens, but I really love how it's got that EMP capability. It just feels very cool to me. Now the next ship isn't a combat ship, but on the theme of combat, if I'm going around doing bunkers and things like that, I like to take my Cutlass Red. It's got a little bit of firepower, enough to defend myself from the basic AI that I see on the low-level mercenary missions, but the biggest kind of strength of this ship is that medical bed in the back. When I'm running into the bunkers coming out, I don't think I ever come out without at least a couple of injuries. So it's really nice just to be able to hop in that bed, get myself refreshed, and then hop into the next bunker without really having to fly back to some sort of planet or space station to get myself healed up. With some patches as well, I know they keep changing this, but it's also nice to be able to respawn on this ship and not have to fly all the way back to the planet when you die. I think the Cutlass Red is very underrated and it's something everybody should have in their fleet. I also have the Pisces Rescue for a very similar reason. It's again just to have that little bit of healing functionality when you need it, but I have it in the smaller pieces so that I can stick it in the back of a C2 or something like that. So if I'm going off doing any other sort of missions where I would need a C2 to bring back the salvage, I've got the PCs parked in the back so I can run down and heal myself quickly if I need to. Very simple, but again, another ship that I think everybody should have. It's actually really good just for your daily kind of running around doing delivery missions and stuff like that as well. Very maneuverable, very easy to park. Small little fun ship, I love it. Now, if we're talking about ships that I use to run around and do bunker missions and delivery missions and stuff like that, it makes sense next to talk about my daily drivers, and makes sense to start that off with my starter ship. I actually really recommend any sort of new players spend that little bit extra and getting the Avenger Titan. I think it's a perfect starter ship. The other options are fine, like the Nomad and stuff like that. You will eventually earn money in game anyway to purchase the Titan if you want, so there's no need to. But the only actual IRL money I've spent on the game is on the Titan, and then everything else I've earned in game. Now the Titan I think is perfect for the beginning of the game, just for doing a little bit of everything. There isn't a type of mission that it can't technically do. It's not great for hauling cargo to make money because obviously it can't carry very much, but the delivery missions, it can do a little bit of combat. You can use it to fly back and forth to bunkers with all your friends in the back just getting smashed around in low gravity. It's quite funny actually. Some of the most belly aching laughs I've had is just watching my friends get smashed off the roof of my Avenger Titan in the back. I love the aesthetic of this ship as well, and honestly, as far as starter ships go, I'm very happy with this ship. Now when we're talking about daily drivers, the next ship I'd recommend moving up to is the C1 Spirit. I might be a little bit biased because honestly this ship is my favourite ship in the game and probably will until the Ranger Zeuses finally come out. But the C1 Spirit I think is a perfect daily driver. It can do everything the Titan can do, but better, and also has that little bit more, I said a little bit, also has quite a bit more cargo capacity, as well as that tractor beam to make loading and unloading things so much easier. I think the C1 is on that perfect level where you've increased all your capabilities without decreasing the maneuverability and just convenience day to day of landing and taking off in certain places. The ship really reminds me of those ships I'd build out of Lego when I was a little kid, and I just love everything about the Spirit. Really recommend getting it if you've got the opportunity to do so. Now the only problem with the Spirit is when you start getting to those higher level missions, it does lack the firepower and honestly defensive capabilities to really stay in the fight. This is where the Corsair comes in. Now the Corsair is often marketed as a multi-crew kind of ship, and that's because to reach its real maximum capabilities, multi-crew is best for at least 3 or 4 people. But I also love it just as your single player daily driver. This might be the most firepower I have as a pilot in any of my ships. It's got so many guns, but also has a lot of cargo space, reasonable amount of armor. It's going to stay in any sort of fight against any sort of PvE targets. However, you will likely be outclassed by any sort of light fighter that a player's flying if they know what they're doing. There are some serious blind spots on the Corsair, especially if you've just got the pilot in the ship. But I love it. When you started making a bit more cash and missions started getting a bit more difficult, this is a great next step for any pilot from the C1. Now, I am going to talk about my money-making ships and a few more miscellaneous ships, but before we do that, I'd like to cover the ground vehicles I have. Now, I do have 3 hoverbike type things which honestly I barely use, and I only have multiple of them because I think I forgot I had the previous ones and thought I needed to buy a new one to do something I wanted to do. Now, these are great for just chucking in the back of a ship if you don't think your ship's going to be full, just for giving you that little bit of extra capability, getting in close to a bunker that perhaps has turrets that's messing your ship up a little bit, or honestly just for racing around and having a little bit of fun. All 3 of these are great, they're a lot of fun, and I do like playing around with them once in a while. I do also have a Tumbril Nova tank. Again, another thing I don't really use, but I bought it just because, let's be honest, tanks are cool. What more is there to say? I think later on as Starcitizen gets further into its development, they have mentioned that there will be a lot more use for ground vehicles where it comes to assaulting bunkers and things like that. So maybe in the future I will start using it a little bit more. But tanks are cool, I like tanks. Now I do have a couple of other little carts and things like that, but the only real ground vehicle I have left that's worth mentioning is the Greycat that I've got here. Now this is the mining version. I think it's nice to be able to have this that I can throw in the back of a C2 and I can just go out there and fly and just spend the evening watching some Netflix and mining up some rocks and just making a little bit of cash. Not the most efficient, but reasonably relaxing, and it's nice to drive a ground vehicle once in a while when you spend the rest of your time flying. Not something I use very often, but something I'm glad I have. Now this next bunch of ships are my money making ships, the ships that I use to make an income in Starcitizen. I'll start with a C2, because let's be honest, I've mentioned it a few times, you're not going to be surprised that I own it, but this is a ship that I have just for hauling things, whether I just want to fly around just doing cargo runs to make some cash, or if I want to move ships from A to B. I think currently in Starcitizen it's kind of unrivaled for that. You've got the whole series, but I think as a solo player they're more faff than they're worth, and not being able to come into orbit with cargo and stuff like that, it's just a bit of a pain in the ass really. Whereas the C2, you can fly into orbit, you can load it up with plenty of stuff to make a decent amount of profit per hour, but you can also drive ships on and off of it as well. Now aesthetically I do prefer the Caterpillar, but functionally the C2 does just beat it quite frankly. I think when they add modularity, the Caterpillar will become a much more viable option for me. Maybe I'll have both for completely different reasons. Honestly, I'm just waiting for the Ironclad. The Ironclad is the ship I'm most excited about in this game. Yep, that's the C2. Now, I mentioned earlier that I had my little mining ground vehicle that I like to stick in the C2 and fly around and do a little bit of mining, but if I want to make proper money mining, I use my MISC Prospector. I think this is something that most people do just have at this point because it's just an easy ship to fly around in, make a little bit of cash, and it's the best way to access the mining features of the game. It's something I don't use very often because honestly I don't mine all that much. I'm more of a salvage guy, which will bring me onto my next ship, but another ship I'm very happy that I own now. But there's no prizes for guessing what my next money making ship is, and that is my Aegis Reclaimer. This ship, honestly, I probably spend more time in than any of my other ships, purely just to make a little bit of money. I say a little bit of money, make a lot of money. Like, salvage isn't as strong as it used to be, but it used to be an insane money maker, which is why I have so many ships. I love this ship, purely because of its money making capabilities. I'm not a huge fan of its aesthetic, it's alright, but yeah, other than that, I just like it. I do get a little bit lost running around on a ship as well. It does confuse me a little bit sometimes, but it makes money. What more can I want from a money-making ship at the end of the day? Now, this next bunch of ships are my luxury type of ships. I've bought these purely because I love Origin as a ship maker. I think their ships are really cool aesthetically, and I love how it feels like you're on a cruise when you're walking around them, and I think they're just beautiful ships, and honestly, they're kind of works of art essentially. But when I started making a lot of money off my Redeemer, I started buying these ships. So I got the 400i here, which I think it's got that sleek kind of yacht aesthetic that I really like. I like how it's got that little pouch at the front as well, where you can chuck in a little ground vehicle, like a little hover bike or something, and fly around in it when you land somewhere. And I actually think the kind of tail gunners it's got are quite cool as well. I love this ship. I don't use it as much as I'd like, but that's purely because of the next ship. The next ship I have here is the 600i. Now the 600i is literally just a bigger, thicker version of the 400i. It's got all those luxurious features that you'd expect. It's got a bar on it. I think the captain's bedroom on this ship might be my favorite in any ship in the game. I think it's beautiful. Yeah, this is another ship that I bought just as I started making a lot of money in the game, and I wanted this just to use as a kind of a bit of a daily driver, although it is a little bit cumbersome, and I will admit I do find myself using the C1 or using the Corsair or something a lot more often than this. But there are definitely evenings where I fly around in my 600i doing bunker missions and stuff like that, especially during a free fly. I think it's kind of cool to fly around in this and you see all the new players hang around the bunkers and they all run over to you like, oh, this is cool. I'm like, yeah, I like it. It just feels cool to fly in a 600i, let's be honest, or any Origin ship for that matter. Now, that sounds a bit cringe and like I'm trying to flex on people or something like that in a 600i, like showing it to new players and stuff like that. But if you want to see the real kind of cringe flexy bullshit, this is my next ship, the 890 Jump. It has a pool. Why would I not want a ship with a pool? It's cool as hell. I think it's honestly a really beautiful ship as well. If it didn't lack so much maneuverability, honestly, it'd be a great daily driver. It's got so much storage space for vehicles, and it's got so much space for so many more crew members and stuff like that. And honestly, this is a ship that I have bought as a flex, as ashamed as I am to say that. But I think in the future, when we do have the ability to travel between star systems, it's going to be a great taxi ship. For instance, there's going to be newer players, or there's going to be players that are focused on specific aspects of the game that maybe don't have ships like this. So maybe traveling between star systems is a lot of time for them, and they just want to rent out a space on a ship like this where they can just sit in the back and chill and fly back and forth. And honestly, I'm really excited for the future where I can make a video with this ship where I just invite everybody onto it, fly between star systems, just chatting to random people on the voice in game and just seeing what people say. I'm sure we'll have some funny interactions in the future. Now, you may assume that's where I'm going to stop, because I did say I'm saving the best to last, but the 890 Jump just isn't that. I've also got my Argo Cargo. I love this little thing. It's honestly more of a meme ship than anything, but it's so funny to fly around with people in the back. Can't go into orbit, but I think it's going to be a nice little drop ship for late game stuff when development carries on. I think it's just a funny little thing to own. It's really funny when you and all your friends meet up in Area 18, you decide to go out and do something, you're like, oh, we'll take my ship. Everybody comes down to your hangar and it's a fucking Argo Cargo. I think it's hilarious. But honestly, that's all the ships that are worth showing. I have got a few other little bits and pieces, but nothing that I really use and nothing too fancy or exciting to see. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I've actually really enjoyed just going over all the ships and remembering why I bought them and just remembering some of the funny times I've had in some of them. I love this game. I think the more creative you are with how you spend your time, the more fun you're going to get out of it. Thank you very much for watching. Do drop a like and let me know what your favourite ships are in the comments below. Other than that, thank you very much and I'll see you next week.